Welcome back to the Shoot Your Shot Sports Fantasy Football Lifeline Show. This is Richie Chicago, and I'm joined by our expert, Jay Ballar. And we are here to help
you
suck
less.
And as always, today's show is sponsored by Thrive Fantasy, the daily fantasy sports app for player props. This can be found on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Make sure you use promo code Lifeline when you sign up today, and actually they will match you up to $50 on your first deposit with the minimum $20. So keep an eye out for this Thursday afternoon for our Thursday night football lineup blocks. All right, G Baller, let's dive into week 3. If injuries weren't enough, COVID has now entered the fantasy football group chat. What should people do to prepare for all this fallout and all that?
Oh man, we made it 3 weeks until this hit. You know, a little bit better than the Cardinals, and with the Cardinals made it 2 days until they had to shut down for a couple weeks. So right now, guys, there's a lot to digest here. We have the Titans are the team that's really in question as of taking the field Sunday. Both the Vikings and the Titans. Nobody had any positive tests. So it's expected that the Titans then, might have broke protocol at the hotel. I believe they stayed back for the night there, Sunday night. Again, there's rules. These guys aren't supposed to do anything, but you never know. That's kind of the expectation when you see what we're titling an outbreak. 8 guys. I think it's 5 players, 3-player personnel. The thing is due to HIPAA, they do not actually have to share who these players are. As fantasy owners, we won't know until tomorrow when the injury report has to be released. And again, at that time, I still don't know what the rules around that are, just because of again, this is a medical issue and they don't have to release all of that. But my expectation is we're going to have a really good idea of who has tested positive by tomorrow, and those individuals will likely be out for the week as they're going to need to show a negative test prior to being able to take the field. Houston, is supposed to be taking on, the Vikings are set to go to Houston this week. I think that game's going to be just fine as long as the Vikings don't have anything pop up. The big question is the Steelers, going to Tennessee. The NFL fully plans on playing that game, even if they have to push it out to Monday night. That buys them an extra day. And again, I just don't foresee if there's an outbreak. Unless there's an outbreak, they're not gonna stop that game. Hey, your team hurt themselves. They're gonna have to field they have a practice squad for a reason. The NFL has allowed them to add 3 additional players to that practice squad this year for this exact reason. So I don't expect it to affect the game, barring more breakouts. Whether it be on the Viking side or on the Titans side. Now, that's not to say that we don't see something else. Again, we'll keep your eyes peeled. But as of the release from Goodell today, they fully plan to play those games, even if they have to push that to Monday. The good thing is they have everybody's wearing these trackers on their wrist, so they can see who they've come in contact with. I think it was a total of 40 people, player personnel that the 8 positives came into contact with. So we'll see how that comes out. But I expect to see more game day training or more game day testing coming out into the future. This is kind of their first shot at getting it right. The good news is if it is canceled, the Steelers and the Titans game, that game's going to be pretty easy to reschedule due to bye weeks and some of the schedule that they both have. I believe they're already talking, the backup would be like week 7, week 8, something like that. But we'll see how it goes. The Vikings-Texans, very different story. That game really needs to get played. And again, everything I'm reading, they're not as worried about that one as the Steelers-Titans. With that being said, what it means for your fantasy team, tomorrow you'll want to really dive in and try to identify if any of your players were at risk. The hope is that, hey, none of these, these are all, guys that don't play, special teamers, what it might be. We don't want to see Derrick Henry, Tannehill, Corey Davis, AJ Brown, Jonnu Smith, the ones coming down with this, but we want to keep an eye on that. should be, we should have an idea tomorrow. So keep an eye. Again, this is the first time I'm seeing this, so I don't know how it's going to come out. We'll play it by ear week over week on how that's going to be reported. But if they do, if you find that it is a Derrick Henry, is a Johnny Smith, what we're going to do is we're going to treat it like a bye week. We're not going to drop that guy. We're going to do our best to try to use the depth in our bench to fill that gap. And again, if he misses a week, he misses a week. It's going to happen. People roll their ankles, bum their knees. Football is a very physical sport. They don't care about your fantasy teams. They care about staying healthy throughout the season. But hey, there's a good waiver wire is really hot again this week. A lot of good options out there. I'm going to go through a couple things here later. Who I think's maybe time to drop, and then of course we'll go through some injuries in the waiver wire. But yeah, my best guess is, hey, we're going to treat this like a bye week, early bye week. So yeah, we're not going to go dropping these guys just yet, and let's not sound the alarms. I expect all the football games to be played this weekend based on the information I'm seeing today.
Awesome. So with that being said, we are 3 weeks in. Who should we be looking at moving on from to play for the waiver wire and all that?
Yeah, so a handful of guys, that we're getting drafted that just have been non-existent. Maybe due to system, maybe due to injury, but hey, guys that were pretty. I would say, you were keeping the depth of them if they were on your roster. You weren't, they weren't somebody you were going to just see hanging on the waiver wire. The first two being, the quarterbacks. Two quarterbacks getting pretty high on were Phillip Rivers and Daniel Jones. Not sure anybody was starting those guys week in, week out. But just in case you were, if they were on your bench, I do think it's very safe to say, hey, you can put those guys back into the waiver pool. Daniel Jones has lost all of his fantasy viability with the Saquon Barkley injury. Completely changes that offense. They looked horrid this weekend against a completely beaten up 49ers defense. I'm not owning Daniel Jones. Hey, he can go out there and throw 5 dimes against the Jets or the Dolphins one week. Again, not somebody I'm going to want on my team. You were texting me on Sunday about Phillip Rivers. First time the guy starts to look good, they get a lead. And again, it was a bad football team. So, it's hard to say, hey, is that the Phillip Rivers we expect? I talked about him last week. He's not been great. He's not having a good year. He doesn't look good. I don't know what's going on there. But until we see back-to-back weeks of 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, I don't need to see him on my lineup. There's plenty of good quarterbacks out there that can fill in if your main guy gets hurt. Right now, we need flex options. The wide receiver, the running backs, and the tight ends to add depth to the lineup. There's 31 quarterbacks out there. You can find someone to start for a week. Kerryon Johnson, he has become irrelevant there in Detroit. 1 year ago, he was high on a lot of my lists. DeAndre Swift, while the Lions didn't do much, Kerryon Johnson has become completely irrelevant. I have no – Adrian Peterson's going to take all the touches from him. There's just no reason to keep him around. Another guy that I like, and again, I'm fine dropping, is Mike Williams. Justin Herbert, great, another great game. Look, he's going to be a good fantasy quarterback. But I'm thinking through. I think Keenan Allen had 17 targets. Hunter Henry had a handful of targets. I know who he's going to throw to, and it doesn't look like it's going to be Mike Williams. Mike Williams is also banged up. So I think there's other viable wide receivers that are going to get you more touches and better chance at a touchdown than Mike Williams. Another one is sad to say is Larry Fitzgerald there in Arizona. Hey, he's a guy that he's going to go down as a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest receivers of all time. He's playing a role. They're in Arizona now. You got DeAndre Hopkins kicking ass. I mean, he's putting up an absurd amount of targets, catches with the targets. They got the Andy Isabella really coming out and showing up. I just don't see Fitz getting the touches that you need to keep him on your lineup. Again, it's going to take a couple injuries to get him to the top of that depth chart. And then Austin Hooper, the tight end there in Cleveland, they paid a lot of money for him. But that's a running offense, and if they're not running, they're going to try to force it into Odell and Jarvis. Right now, Odell's possibly startable, but Jarvis hasn't done much. That offense is okay. They come into a team. This week Dallas has no secondary. I just saw Monday night or Sunday afternoon. They could do a little bit more. You know, they're going to have a tough time running the ball. But again, Hooper, there's plenty of good tight ends, and I'll dive into a couple guys. I think their stock's up based on this, but Hooper's somebody that I'm fine dropping him. You know, last year was a freak season with Atlanta, and I think that's the only that got him paid. Good for him. He's a great blocking tight end as well. But from a fantasy standpoint, you got guys like Jimmy Graham, who I think is going to be a stud there in Chicago with Nick Foles, and Mo Alley Cox. You know, we talk about him 2 weeks in a row. They're in Indianapolis. Jack Doyle was back. It didn't matter. You know, Cox still got the targets and his touchdown. So just guys doing better. Guys playing better than Hooper is and seeing the targets. So from a stock up standpoint, a couple guys I want to, Scotty Miller. I think with Chris Godwin going down, I like Scotty Miller a lot. The word out of training camp was him and Tom Brady were getting together a lot, and he was going to have a really big piece in this offense coming into the year. Godwin goes down. Evans had 2 catches for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. So hey, he put some viable day up. But Gronk had some catches. OJ Howard had some catches. A lot of big bodies out there on the outside. Scotty Miller is going to be able to squeeze in there and really make a difference, I think, for Tom Brady. Play that Julian Edelman type. Hey, I don't see him as a Julian Edelman type, but if you had Chris Godwin on your lineup, in your lineup, you had somebody like Julio Jones, Devontae Adams. You need someone to fill in there where, especially in a PPR league, the guy's going to get his targets. He's going to get his 80 yards. I think he's going to start scoring touchdowns. So that's a couple of people that I really like that. Hey, they might not have popped up that. I'm going to be sure that, if they're available, I'm trying to snag them. From an injury standpoint, we saw a couple things. Chris Carson, the Tyson Hill Gator roll, rolled up on his knee. Again, we don't get the injury report till tomorrow. If you have Chris Carson, I would highly recommend going after Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde is going to be my number 3 waiver wire guy this week, behind a couple of guys. If the Chris Carson injury was more serious, Carlos Hyde would move up. Last year in Houston, came in there, got 1,000 yards rushing. The guy can still get it done. They got a pretty solid offense there. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a good pro. He's a veteran. He's going to get the numbers. He's going to get the numbers week in, week out if he's the guy. I just don't see Chris Carson being out for that long, so I'm not too worried there. Dallas Goedert, just when he went to the IR, it's only 3 weeks, but he was a big pickup after week 1. Again, the Philadelphia Eagles are bad. Carson Wentz is bad. He's got to turn it around sometime, but Ertz should see some of the most of the targets coming out of there. Alshon Jeffrey said to come back in a couple weeks, so again, Goddard, somebody I'm not sure I'd sit on him. He's probably somebody I'd drop. See what happens when he comes back. Godwin's hurt again, so concussion, and now he's got a bum knee. So he's going to be out for 3 weeks. We've talked about Scotty Miller. I'm stepping in. I'm taking him. And then the other 2 big ones. Julio was a late day scratch again. Russell Gage, he's pretty much owned all around by now. And Devontae Adams, he was a late scratch. Sounded like he probably could have played. I love how confident the Packers were not starting their number 1 wide receiver against the Saints. Because heard Chris Collinsworth talk, and he said Devontae Adams looked great pregame. Hey, somebody like that, we don't have to get him re-injured. Hey, no, I'm fine with him sitting out for a day if I get to use him, back into the season. Lazard is the guy there if you need a backup. Lazard could actually be pretty prominent the rest of the season the way Rodgers is throwing the ball. I don't think I think he's probably owning about all your leagues now, but he's out there if you need him. And then Tariq Cohen, sorry to hear, with the Bears here. Again, not a ton of fantasy relevance. Was probably on most teams. I don't know what they're going to do to replace him. It's hard telling. But Montgomery looks okay, and the offense is going to be a lot different. I want to see what the offense looks like with Nick Foles taking over. And I think they're going to be able to move away from some of those dump offs, and Nick Foles is going to be airing the ball out to Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson a lot, and it's got me even as a non-Bears fan, it's got me excited to see what they can do from a fantasy standpoint. But with all that, what we'll send out, hey, is depending on where your injuries are at, depending on where your depth is, it's really hard because there's so many good options. So I'm going to give you, who I think my top 4 running backs are, who I would put my top 5, wide receivers are, who they are. Everybody else, again, if you want to switch quarterback, but It's really hard to say, yeah, here's the top waiver wire this week because everybody's in a different situation. But if you were watching Thursday night, Myles Gaskin is clearly the go-to guy in Miami. And that's going to be a pretty fun offense to watch from a fantasy standpoint. I'm adding him on every league I can. He's my top waiver wire pickup. Jeff Wilson, the backup to the backup there in San Francisco, came in and had a lot of nice touches. McKinnon, busted his rib. He sounded like he could have played, but they were killing him. So Wilson got that garbage time. Carlos Hyde, again, that's one where we want to see what's going on with Chris Carson. If you own Chris Carson, I'm 100% adding Carlos Hyde. He will take precedent over everybody else. And then Brian Hill, you Bears fans, we're watching Brian Hill look pretty good. Gurley got most of the snaps and a number of touches more than Brian Hill, but I thought Brian Hill looked more electric. And he's someone that, hey, if I have Gurley, I'm definitely stashing him. But I'm not, if I'm really hurting a running back, I'm not afraid to use a waiver claim on him this week in order to have a backup. So. Then for my wide receivers, I think the rookie out of a lot of rookies here. So you guys, if you're not familiar with some of these names, these guys are young. Brandon Ayuk, the rookie there in San Francisco, as you know, I've talked about. They have basically a bunch of running backs and nobody catching the ball. They did their best to get the ball in his hands. He's going to be a solid receiver. He's a big body guy. He had some running plays. He's extremely athletic. He's someone that can work himself into the wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 conversation here later in the year. But he's going to be the guy I'm going after, number one. I know a lot of people are really high on the Justin Jefferson in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The rookie there, 7 catches, 175 yards and a touchdown. First time somebody's done that since Randy Moss. You still have Adam Thielen there. You still have Kirk Cousins throwing the ball. The first 2 weeks were just not great. Again, I'm adding Justin Jefferson if I need a spot. I'm not ruining a waiver claim for him, but I'm definitely adding if that's the case. Scotty Miller, coming in. If you own Chris Godwin, I think Scotty Miller is a great one to add. He's going to be somebody that in a PPR league especially definitely can get you over to over the 10-point hump. T. Higgins had 2 touchdowns last week there in Cincinnati. At least somebody's catching the ball. AJ Green still getting the targets. Still can't catch him. Tease somebody. Hey, he's another rookie out of Clemson. Guy can be he's been in big games. He looks like he looks the part. He's somebody I'm probably wanting to get on my team, especially if I'm dealing with some injuries. And then Alshon Jeffrey, Mr. Injury himself. He's every year he plays about 4 or 5 games. I think he's only played one 16-game season, but he's going to be coming back in the next couple of weeks. Might be worth an ad. Again, it is risky if you really need everybody on your team to start, or you're banking on a backup. But yeah, he's, if you have the ability to put him on there and you can take a roster spot away, he's somebody I would be looking to roster to come this week with the expectation of coming back in the next 2 weeks. Again, I don't know what Carson Wentz is going to need to get better, but where we're at in the season with the injuries, he's a name. People know him. He's probably going to get targets right away. He's not somebody that's going to have to earn his keep there in Philadelphia. And then a couple people, Nick Foles, you saw he threw 5 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. 2 of those got called back. The guy likes to air it out. The Bears are going to be involved in about every game they play. Can't run the ball that well, so Foles is going to be chucking the rock around the field quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy Graham was one of his favorite targets, and Mo Alley Cox. I think if you're getting deep in wanting to find somebody viable to play, Jimmy Graham, Mo Alley Cox, I like both those guys. So where it stands, it's a weird week, guys, with COVID. Make sure you are really taking in who on your team could possibly be affected this week. Using your waiver wire accordingly, using your ad drops accordingly. Don't make any rash decisions until you have to. But if you're really hurting and it looks like, man, I might lose it. The Titans might not play. You might have to protect yourself because here we are. After 3 weeks, if you're sitting at 0-3, you don't want to go 0-4. Wins are going to start getting important, especially if we see this COVID thing start popping up a couple more times.
Definitely. So any final thoughts? Any final notes?
Yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes heard me talking shit about him last week. Because man, he went off. And the amount of text messages I got from Kansas City fans saying, "Ha, what I tell you?" Like, hey guys, I don't expect that every week. We haven't seen it since 2018. So hey, more power to you. I'm glad that you kept him. Hope you didn't trade him. But Eric Fisher's not going to catch a touchdown every week. Andy Reid's not going to open up the playbook like that every week. They were making a statement to beat the Ravens. That was their first round bye. They've pretty much locked up the first round bye, barring something crazy happening to their team. The Chiefs could now, really in this season on a run. I'm not going to say undefeated, but they're not going to need to run, half the plays they ran against the Ravens to win games. And still, I think he's a great middle tier fantasy quarterback. But the return you can get for somebody like that, I still stand by until he has, multiple games like Russell Wilson. That's going to be what it's going to be where I stand. The Houston offense. A lot of people have asked, hey, do I, Will Fuller, Cooks, David Johnson, Deshaun Watson, what's going on? Well, they've had to play the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Steelers in the first 3 weeks, and those are most likely some of the the two of the best defenses from scoring. The Chiefs, amazing, Super Bowl champions. That's a really rough schedule to start with. I'm sticking with these Houston offensive starters. I'm rolling with them. Their stock's going to be down because they've had 3 really tough weeks, but the schedule gets easier. Cooks, Fuller, David Johnson, Deshaun Watson, still like them. I'm not dumping them. I'm not trading them for pennies. Keep an eye on those guys. I think that they'll be okay moving forward. I think they'll be viable fantasy guys. Other than that, keep an eye out Thursday. We'll have our Thrive Fantasy locks for the Thrive Fantasy Thursday night football game. And hey, stay safe out there. Wear your mask.
Awesome. All right. See you guys Thursday.
All right. See you guys. Have a good one.